Okay. And then go back to where I was. So when you're looking at the screen that contains all of the lessons, then you can see that our Fighting for the Vote lessons are in the left-hand column and the Fighting for Change are in the right. We're going to be doing module 3 today. So you click on the little plus sign, it gives you a really brief description of what the lesson is. And then you click on the view modules and you'll come to the actual file where things are. Now, in this particular one, you can see the questionnaire that I just asked you to download, but also a couple of things, several of them from Circle at Tufts University about growing young voters, particularly for the 2024 election. So those are resources for you. But we go to the individual elections, and there are the different types that are available to you as lessons using the vote by design strategies. We're going to go to the presidential elections, and what you see is both the slideshow and the script. And the script is has each one of the slides in it with the actual wording that you can use if you choose to. I mean, we really, you need to stick to the script to have the outcomes that we've had. So those are the words. You can obviously modify them for the age group that you're working with, for the community that you're working with, for the type of town, like are you urban, rural, suburban, or whatever. The closer you can come to the actual life experiences of the people that you're working with, the more effective it's going to be for them. I'm going to go right to the slideshow because I have in front of me printed that script so that I can refer to it and not forget any of the important things that I want to get across. When we're working, we do recommend that you work with another person anytime you go into a classroom. And that's helpful as well, because with the two people referring back and forth, if I forget to say something, my partner can jump in and say, oh, but you forgot to say, and then fill in the gaps. So it's really helpful to do this as a team. I'm going to share. Okay, so often we talk about the role of the US president and other elected officials as well in ways that are abstract and academic. And today's experience is about helping you gain a better understanding of, first, what exactly is the job of the president? We think we know, but maybe we don't know enough. And then what matters to you personally when thinking about the person you wish to vote for. So let's set the stage. I just said that. Okay, let's set the stage and take a little poll to see where our thinking is before we start today's experience. You'll be asked, how well do you think you understand the job of the president? And if you're a current voter, which all of you are, so I'm going to assume that, do you tend to vote for a presidential candidate based on policy issues, or do you vote based on the candidate's personal traits? And do you have clarity on the previous work experience, leadership qualities, and personal attributes that are important to you personally based on your values in a presidential candidate? So I'm going to paste, I hope. Back again. Sorry about that. I'm going to go back to the chat. And now I have lost all of you. There you are. And this is a form that I'd like you to open for yourself and complete. It's short. Okay, I forgot to erase all the other, this was an older link, but what I did when we, after you fill it out, there's a little pencil in the lower right-hand corner. If you click on that, you not only have the questions that you just answered, but I can also see what people's responses were. And it changes them into graphs. So you and other people in the last group who answered this question, most of you felt that you knew pretty well what the job of the president was. And most of you voted only on policy issues. There were some who voted on the person. Most of the person were only the policy. And most of you, quite a lot of clarity about what you really wanted in a candidate. Okay. So I'm going to go back to this.
This is Fran.
Yes, I hear you.
Where was the Google Sheet? Was that at what was at the top in the light blue bar? Where did that come from?
The form that you just got?
Yes.
All right, that form, the link to that form is on the slide that you would use. And it's also printed. You would have to, copy it somewhere else. It's printed on the script that goes along with it. After today, for example, because I forgot to take out all of the responses from the previous time, I'll go back and I will just erase those. The form will still be available to you, but it will be empty so that the responses will reflect just the group that you're working with at that time.
I think I need a little more clarity on that. Is there a way that we, as presenters, how do we activate and take the poll? Because everyone is not interacting as we are today, because the majority of time we're going to be doing a live presentation.
Okay, good question, Piri. When I'm doing a live presentation, I get a QR code, which is easy to do. And if you don't know how to do it, I'll work with you separately. But I get a QR code and I put it on that slide. And so people in the audience can just pick up their phones and they will get right to that form and they'll be able to fill out the form sitting in their seats. And then you still have the access to the results when you finish doing it.
Okay. I'll get my camera fixed eventually.
Don't worry about that. I know what you look like, and so will everybody else when you get it fixed. Okay. Any other questions about how that form works or what you need to do before we go on? Because there are a couple of them. One thing I should say to you, in fact, let me show you so that you know what I'm talking about. All right, so this is you can see the slide, the film strip, as well as the slide that's on the screen. And if you look at the beginning, I've hidden all of these. This is the intellectual agreement. So most of you know what that is right already. And then there are notes to the presenter. So you can see this presentation makes use of polls and Jamboards. And then there are directions for you as the presenter about how to use those. Now, obviously, it's a really good idea to practice ahead of time because you can see that even though I have done this a lot of times, there are things that I mess up. The one thing I can tell you is if you mess up, it's not a big deal. You just go back and you fix it. But the directions are there. So you can take it and you can practice with it ahead of time so that you have a greater feeling of confidence. All right, so I think we were here. Okay, so you took the poll. No, you took the poll, so we're here. How well do you really think you understand the job of the president? And if you're a current voter, how would you vote on the candidates or whatever? So you use the poll and then you go on to the next slide. So as a voter, it's a good idea to think of yourself as hiring somebody to do a job. So you need to think about really, what are you actually hiring that person to do? What's the job description? What are the main responsibilities that that person is going to have in that office? So this will lead us to a Jamboard, which many of us used yesterday, but you should be able to see a Jamboard now, which says you're hiring the President of the United States of America. What are you actually hiring for? Am I correct? Can you see it or
Yes,
not?
we can
Okay,
see it. Yes.
okay. Well, somebody else just came in. All right. I'm going to put the link in the chat for that. Sorry about that. So that you can do the same thing you did for the, darn it, I keep hitting that button and I don't want to. What I want to do is copy it. So I need to right click, copy the link address, and go back to the chat and put it into the chat for you. All right. Now,
Oops.
if you click, how are you? All right. If you click on that link, it will take you to what you just saw on my screen. So I'm going to go back to that screen. All right. Now, if you look down the left-hand side, you'll see a menu, and the center one is a sticky note. If you click on that, you'll get a sticky note that pops up. You can change the color. And then in here, you can click and you can add your understanding of what you're hiring for. So for example, he's the, let's see, he signs bills into law. So that's one thing the president has to do, and that's mine. Okay. What are some of the other responsibilities that you know that the president has? Grab a sticky note and add it to the board.
We have to get the sticky note from the chat link, is that correct?
Not from the chat link. The chat link brings you to the page that you probably can see on my screen right now.
Okay.
And down the left-hand side, there's a menu bar.
Okay.
Go
I
ahead.
don't have the menu bar. It just says I have view only access.
I am going to change that. That happened yesterday too. So I'm going to have that, try that one.
A different link. Okay.
Yeah, it gives you, it should give you the opportunity. Oh, I know what. Let me try it one more time. Okay. And you can also make them larger if you need more space. And move them around. Is it one up there? You're doing such a great job. I will tell you that you don't get this many of this much. You don't get this much detail from most kids. Sometimes in an advanced placement class in high school or with a college classroom, you will, because they have more, background in the thing. But I'll get things like commander in chief signs the laws, some of the basic things that most kids would know. So you've got a pretty good idea of some of the things that are responsibilities of the president. But let's take a look at what it actually is. In the actual Constitution, let me find my page. Article 2 says that the person, that's where it's found in Article 2. The executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States. And according to Article 2, the responsibilities are very limited. It's to give Congress information regarding the state of the union from time to time, and to ask Congress to consider measures the president judges necessary and expedient. And the qualifications that are required are less than you are required to do usually if you're going to work in McDonald's, or certainly if you're going to have any kind of profession. But those are the things. You have to be a natural born citizen, 35 years old or older, and a U.S. resident for 14 years. These are some of the things that you've added to it. Serves as commander-in-chief, executes and enforces the laws, appoints cabinet members, ambassadors, Supreme Court judges, signs legislation into law or vetoes bills, negotiates and signs treaties, issues executive orders to clarify further existing laws, and extends pardons and clemencies for federal crimes, except impeachment. So now let's focus on you. What do you actually want in a president? I'm going to go back. And I have lost I was playing around with this earlier, and so I've messed a few things up, I can see, and I apologize for that. Maybe in terms of personal qualities, you chose characteristics such as inspiring or innovative, or you chose fair or honest or empathetic or analytical or decisive. Imagining what you really value in a leader can help you imagine the types of people you'd like to see in office before you're actually voting for them in the election. And then you can look to see who the closest one is to what you want, and then choose that person. So exploring what we want in a president. This is the form that I put in the chat box initially, and I know that there are people who came in since then, so I will put it back again so that you can get it. If what you need to do is to make some choices. In the first section, which is previous experiences that you believe a leader should have, you can't pick all of them. You have to narrow it down and pick just the 3 that are most essential in your mind. When it comes to leadership values and qualities, again, they're probably all important, but you have to choose the 5 that are most important to you. And then the last section is personal attributes, and you need to pick 3 of them. So for the people who are here, and I'm going to hope that I get the share button that's going to let you do this. I'll try it again.
But once again, how do we do it when we're in a classroom? How do we get the sharing from a classroom? And one of my thoughts was, you had previously had said to us, well, that the students would be potentially using sticky notes and then carrying them up to maybe an easel. And one other idea, although one would definitely need an assistant, is that those sticky notes would be entered by the presenter's partner with the Jamboard concept. But in other words, the presenter, just like you're doing, because then it is all on the screen again, which is very wonderful. I personally wouldn't want to have to do both the Jamboard and the presentation, though. So,
Yeah, it really does help to have a partner for that. If I'm understanding you correctly, what you'd prefer is to not have to deal with the technology part and to just use it in the classroom. Is that correct?
that is what I believe I will be doing. Yes.
Okay. And that's why I apologized to you for not sending you this particular form ahead of time.
Well,
When I go into a classroom in person, I have this printed two-sided, because on one side you have what I'm asking you to do right now, and on the other side, it gives you an opportunity to record things based on video clips that you see. And what you'll see kids doing then is looking back at what they put down as their choices for those three things: personal qualities, leadership characteristics, and previous experiences, and then turning back to record from the video clip what they actually saw. Did they see those things in that particular candidate? So you're right. For this one, it is much easier to do something different than using a QR code, but you can do that. You can use the QR code if you want the kids to be able to use their phones.
okay, so it could be a QR code.
It could be, yes.
Okay, so it's like something that one would ask the instructor, what is most appropriate in your classroom? Are people using their phones, and how do we keep them from doing other things on their phones when they're not just doing the QR code? That's the conundrum, isn't it?
Well, it's a conundrum, but that's one of the things when I said right at the outset that you need to adapt each one of these lessons for your particular context.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm working in a middle school, at least in my experience so far, those kids are not allowed to have their phones. Their phones go into, like a shoe bag kind of thing, whatever, to get them out of the kids' hands so they pay attention to what's going on in the classroom. In high schools, I found different setups. Sometimes they're allowed to have them and sometimes not. If the teacher knows ahead of time that they're going to be using them for something that's interactive in classroom, like when I'm setting this up with them, sometimes they will allow their kids to have their phones out for that thing, but then they have to go away again. So it depends, if your class can do that, that's great. You'll have some classes where the kids aren't capable of being that self-disciplined. So I would talk to the teacher ahead of time, but in my personal experience, once I'm back in the classroom, that piece of paper is much more effective than trying to do something technology-wise. I'm really glad you asked that question, Piri. Thank you.
So then the follow-up would be to save you from being barraged by many of us about, okay, when we do it in the classroom, I don't know, are the tools already on the program for what we're going to print?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. When you first click.
Sorry, that's my dog.
That's okay. When you click from the website to this particular module, you will see that there are two folders which have the script and the slideshow in them. And you'll see 4 different individual documents. One of those documents is this leadership characteristics and qualities one. And when you print it, if you print it double-sided, you'll have this on one side, and on the other side, you'll have spaces for kids to take notes when they look at the video clips that will be coming up. So they can judge whether their personal values are being demonstrated in that particular candidate in that particular opening statement. You'll see when we get to that part, I think you'll see better, but let's focus right now on that leadership. If you've got it printed, like I asked some of you, if you could, then I would say fill it out on the printed sheet. Otherwise, fill it out on the actual form that you have, and then you'll have to look at that form. So you'll be flipping back and forth between that form and between looking at the videos that we have. I have the opportunity to do a split screen on my computer so that I can see both of them at the same time. If you've got that, that's great. Whatever's going to work for you.
Pat, this is
Yep.
Fran. You know, back to what Perry asked. I'm going to speak for myself.
Sure.
You know, the utilizing this Jamboard and throws me a little bit into a tizzy. I'm not super duper technology oriented. I did it my entire career, but when it comes to interacting with students or a group of people, I'm more the paper girl. And so I guess the only thing we can't do with paper forms is to develop the findings, the graphs and things of that nature, because we would not be able to do the calculation of that information. So is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
I'm good.
Yeah. There are a couple of things that we've talked about that I have personally done in the past, like using the sticky notes and having them, come up and using that for them to record their answer, and then putting that where everybody can see it, or on the table, or wherever they are, so that the teacher or presenter can walk around and see what's going on. When it's simpler and there are maybe 2 or 3 questions, you can have kids stand, move to opposite corners of the room to demonstrate what their answer is, which gets them up and moving. Again, you need to know your group, because sometimes that can be chaos and sometimes it can be really, really effective. So when you're a teacher already, you'll have some of those strategies in your head. When you're working in a classroom for the first time with kids, I would do the easiest thing possible for you that is going to be the least disruptive in the classroom. And then as your skill builds, then you add a couple of other things into your bag of tricks. Okay? All right. Back to the form. Okay, and it looks like most of you have responded on here. All right, so when we look at this, you can see that the top 3 here are that you want a candidate to have governance experience, community service, and community organizing ability, and really close to that is academic excellence. And when we look at leadership qualities, we see that the biggest one is integrity, and then a person who's a strong communicator. And then again, there are 4 that are pretty close. One is relationship builder and bolder visionary. And then the 2 just below that are someone who's analytic and someone who's empathetic. So you can see right there, that was supposed to be 5 qualities, and we've got 6, 7. Personal attributes, successful is the winner there. Healthy and children. I'll tell you, when you go into a classroom, the one that's going to jump out is young, which is fun. Now, you have your personal qualities shown on your sheet. And what we're going to do, I was going to pitch you in breakout rooms, but I think we can do it with just the number of people who are here. So what I want you to do, you're going to have to negotiate, because you all came up with slightly different lists of the characteristics that were important to you. What you're going to have to do as a group is to decide on the 3 most important experiences that all of you can live with, which means you are probably going to have to give up something that you thought was important. And the 5 leadership qualities, again, you're probably going to have to give up something, not everything. There are going to be some things you agree with. And then the same thing with the personal characteristics. And the idea behind this, when you do it with kids, is to help them understand that there is never going to be somebody who is perfect, is the absolute quintessential leader that they're looking for, that they are going to have to just be willing to give up something to get the one who's closest to what they believe will be their good leader as not. So this is a point where I'm going to shut up and let's take the first thing on the list, which were the previous experiences. So I would say, let's see, Fran, because you've been willing to be outspoken and ask the questions that are the hard questions and put yourself on the spot. Tell everybody else what your 3 personal qualities are. And then if you would ask the others what theirs are, I'd appreciate it.
I selected executive experience, governance experience, and legislative experience.
Okay, now ask the others, please.
In order, I'll just go around the room. Sarah Beth, what were your top 3?
You're
Mhm.
muted,
Okay,
Sarah.
yes, I'm unmuted now. Let's see if I can remember the form now that I'm back. Executive experience,
Okay.
governance experience,
Mhm.
and the third, sorry, was community service.
Okay, and Sarah Beth, you can look at that and I think you can still see people.
I can see, yeah. Now I can.
Okay, and I'm asking Fran to do this because normally the kids would be in smaller groups right now. You'd break them up into small groups and you would have to appoint somebody as the leader in that group. So Fran's doing what I'm asking.
Yeah, and what I'm doing, because I printed the sheet like you suggested,
Mhm.
and I'm putting dots
Good.
next to everyone's answers. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. Go ahead.
Okay, Jean, you're next.
Well, I wanted to balance it out. So I said domestic, international, and executive.
Okay, Steve.
I chose community organizing, domestic, and governance.
Janice.
So I did community organizing, community service, and governance.
Hila.
Theory.
I put academic excellence, community organizing, governance experience.
I'm sorry, academic excellence.
Community organizing or
And
service and governance experience.
and Tila is at the bottom.
Hi, I came in late. So I came in a little late and I still haven't figured out how to get sticky notes or any of the things that Pat's posting onto my computer. So I'm listening to all of you.
Okay,
And
that's cool.
number 1 would be governance experience. I think integrity was there, but I'm not sure. Maybe that was in the next column. Governance, and whoever said a balance in the 3, I kind of like that. So I would go maybe something community service, and I don't remember the list, but definitely a balanced approach.
Cool. All right, so
Sharon Suber is down at the bottom of my thing. So let's, if she's
I
there.
would say, I had governance experience, community organizing, and legislative experience.
And Miriam.
yeah. Janice.
Let's see. I agree with you, Francis. governance, executive, and legislative for the president.
Governance, executive, okay.
And legislative.
Oh, Mr. Softy's here. Okay, so Janice, did you answer? Okay, I'm mixed up. And I can't see the people that, did we get all the people that are not visible? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, should I give you the findings?
Why don't you share with the group what things everybody agreed with?
Okay. But I won't do it in order. I'm just going to talk about what was agreed upon. Okay. We only had 1 for academic excellence. We have 4 for community organizing, 3 for community service, 2 for domestic experience, 4 for executive experience. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think 8 for governance experience, 1 for international experience, and 3 for legislative experience. And I'm sorry if anyone said an other, I didn't write it down.
Okay, but you've got one that clearly is something.
Without
all of you
question,
agree
governance experience is slam dunk, the most significantly responded to one. Yeah.
with. Okay,
And then the next one, the next 2 that share an even are community organizing and executive experience. That's
okay.
it.
So there are some people who didn't choose those other 2. Now, do you remember, those of you who were here other days, we had the kids present their reasoning behind something they felt really strongly about in order to at least put the idea out there. Not everybody's going to feel the same way, but at least they can understand another opinion and maybe they'll change their minds. So at this point, if there's someone in the group who really wants to defend one of those positions that was lower down on the scale, please share that with the other people in the group now.
Okay, me.
Go ahead, Jean.
I picked domestic and international, and I think partly because just having community service doesn't necessarily mean you've got experience with anyone outside our country, and having some experience internationally is really important because you're the one who decides if we go to war, if we pay people. I mean, we have to get beyond our borders. So, you know, domestic to me includes community organizing, and it includes,
okay.
you know, some of the other things that people were choosing, because the opposite of international is domestic. I kind of thought those 2 balanced each other out. Be familiar with the issues and the problems domestically as well as internationally, because a president isn't just a governor. Governors don't have to know what's going on in Ukraine necessarily, but presidents do. And that's really important to keep the world intact. So,
okay, so that meant that you would not have chosen community organizing or the other community thing on a local level.
I
Those
didn't
people, those people who did choose that, do you still want to stick with your position, or do you feel that Jean has made a good case for giving that particular leadership, that particular experience up?
I agree with Jean. I think international, I actually had picked 5 and I had to scale it back. And I think peer pressure, I gave into peer pressure. I truly did. So yes, Jean, I think that's very important as well.
Okay, so
I agree also. And I didn't
Um,
have a list, so.
I still want to stick with my community stuff because international experience is just international experience. When you organize in the community, you get everybody's thoughts, everybody's ideas, different sides of the fence, but you figure it out and you move forward and you achieve the goal. And the same with community service, you're humbled and you understand what the needs are in your community and you're willing to give it that. I just think that international experience is just that, international experience. What does that mean? You know,
that means treaties, and that means
not necessarily
and
well,
negotiation and
not necessarily, yeah.
NATO.
What we have now are arguments for 2 different characteristics or experiences that are important. Is there anybody who didn't have one of those 2 who wants to make an argument for something they put forward that hasn't been discussed yet. So could everybody live with those three characteristics, those three experiences? If the candidate had those
Which
that
three
were
are you talking
assigned
about?
at the start. So that would be like community organizing, community service. I'm going to lump those two together because I think they're close enough that we can do that. What Jean said about international and domestic experience, and then the one that you all agreed with, which was former governance experience. Okay, so that needs to happen with each one of those. So let's take the other one that's 3 and do that one, which was the personal characteristics down at the bottom of your list. So somebody else comfortable leading it? Jean, how about you? Because I know you're a leader.
Yeah, somehow it turned into one. I personally had trouble getting 3. I really only came up with 2 because I personally don't think that personal attributes are always, these particular ones are not necessarily as important as their experience and their skill set. And these are not skills. These are, some of them are just what you look like. It, you know, attractive is nice, but effective and skilled is more important to me. So the only thing I came up with was healthy in children, because if a president's sick, they can't do their job so well. And if they have children, they've had to sacrifice for someone besides themselves, and they're not as self-centered as other human beings might be. And that's all I came up with. So
Okay, so will you do what Fran did before, and will you ask each other person what they
Sure.
are?
Okay, so let's see. Who's not? You're all, well, Stephen's not muted, so let me hear Stephen.
I was the one that put down NA. To me, the personal attributes, I try not to have that have any effect um, on who I would consider for being a president, whatever they're, I mean,
Right.
I'm a campaigner basically, and I've worked men, women, people of every different stripe, and it really doesn't matter to me. So whatever works for the voters on that.
Interesting.
Okay.
Okay, try
That is
others.
good. Okay, how about let's see, Sarah Beth?
Okay, good. I'm kind of with Stephen there. The personal attributes that were listed didn't seem to have much to do with the qualities that I looked for, that of the checklist that we've looked at previously. And you know, any of those characteristics could be a plus or a minus. Children for Donald Trump is not
That's true. Didn't seem to help.
We're
But
not
anyway,
partisan,
said that.
folks.
okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Talking
So-
about any candidate that has or is or possibly will be.
Okay, so you're another NA.
I am.
Okay, Francis, how about you?
I am wholeheartedly an NA.
Okay.
Because I tried to put a mark in the boxes, and I said, I don't like any of these.
I didn't really either, so I would go along with changing me to NA too. So
Yeah. But
how about
yeah.
Janice?
Well, I did select healthy, children, and successful.
Okay,
Yeah, just health. Yeah, I mean, because I had to pick 3, but
right.
And
How
she
about
always said, Janice
Well-
always does what I ask.
I tried. But
Well, I picked qualities.
what
Because
did you pick, Piri?
Well, and I picked it both from the electability point of view as well as the ability to get the job done. So I did choose integrity, relationship builder, and strong communicator.
That's the previous category. That's not the third one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're doing personal attributes.
Okay, let me go down there. Okay, 1 second. Okay, what would I do? Well, I'm embarrassed. I put healthy, children, and successful. How's that?
Okay, that's 2 people.
That's pretty
fine.
vague though, but anyway, that's what I put.
That's okay. Did we hear from Tila?
No, but you will.
Okay.
Healthy, children, and successful describes a candidate I do not want. So I'm an NA.
Okay. That's good. Okay. How about Miriam?
I would definitely say healthy, and while they say religious, I would like for it to be someone who has some spiritual values, and so they can
Yeah,
kind of have
accessible.
some criteria for right and wrong or greatest good or something. So I would have to include that. I don't have a third one out of those. So
Okay. Okay. What about Sharon?
I have, I'm gonna go with Miriam, not religious, but I think spiritual.
Okay.
And I think that healthy, not defined as someone who is physically healthy, but healthy all around, mental and everything like that. And at some point, successful at something, not necessarily they just, whatever, but successful at something. So successful, healthy, and spiritual.
Okay. So it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I change my vote to NA, we have 5 that said NA, and the next highest quality was healthy, or whatever, and the other ones were kind of ties. The children, successful, and religious or spiritual were all 2. So
So
seemed
I think
we
what
didn't all
that
pick
means is
3.
you need to choose between children and then spiritual, so that's something that everybody could live with.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. We had 5 people who won't choose anything, so
Well, if I had to choose between children and spiritual, it would definitely be because there are many people in this world who do not have children who have perfectly rich lives. And so that's what I would choose. It's the idea that you can understand that there are things that are beyond our control and that you are not the center of the universe. So
I guess the, if you're really going to dissect it though, how does one, I certainly don't want it to be religious because that means you have to have a religion. And yet how does one demonstrate? I mean, I'm a spiritual, more Buddhist than anything, but how does one demonstrate that? So I agree with the sentiment that you have, but as far as how would you, hard to define.
yeah.
That's why I think integrity is a personal quality, and that to me is integrity and morality to me are, I'd have to look up in Webster's, but I think they're pretty synonymous.
They are pretty synonymous. I just looked them up the other day.
Good.
Okay, I'm going to give you a pass on the last one, but I think if you reflect on what's just happened in those 2, you can see how people would really begin to think about qualities.
Yeah.
And when you get to the leadership qualities, you would have a much bigger argument than you've had on any of the things there now. But it is worth the time to let the kids go through this, because what they see is that first people disagree and they have good reasons for disagreeing, and that you don't have to agree with what the other person is, but it really is helpful to understand why they think the way they do. And if we get to a point where we can do that as a society, then we're going to have a much more civil society than we are living in right now. So giving kids that experience is one of the things that will help produce citizens in the future who will have a greater likelihood of having that set of skills. Doesn't mean they're always going to use them, but at least they will have had the experience of doing something like this. All right, so now you've got your characteristics in your mind, and you can use your personal characteristics again now when you look at the next. We're going to look at 4 video clips. 2 of them are from the 2016 primary, and 2 of them are from the 2020 primary. So we have 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. So it's as balanced as it can be. While you're watching those, I want you to pay attention to the words that they use and look for things that match what you chose as your most important qualities in a candidate. But I also want you to watch their body language, and I want you to see what that communicates to you in terms of who they are and not just who they are, but those personal characteristics, because you'll sometimes see more in terms of their body language and who they are personally than you will see their leadership qualities through that. So we're going to stop in between each one of them to give you a couple of minutes to do that comparison and make notes for yourself. What is in line with what you wanted? What did you notice that maybe disturbs you a little? Just anything that you think might help you make a decision at the end of this as to which candidate would be your favorite. You can see our, all right, so here we go. And you'll have to tell me if you can't hear the sound. I think I set it up okay this time.
Thank you all very much. The next president is going to be confronted with an unforeseen challenge. That's almost certain. It could be a pandemic, a major natural disaster, or an attack on our country. The question for South Carolinians and Americans is, who do you want to have sitting behind the big desk in the Oval Office? Because that's the question. It's not the things that we're talking about today. It's the great challenge that may happen. I believe I will have a steady hand as Commander-in-Chief and President of the United States. I will unite this country around common purposes, because I did it as governor of the state of Florida. When I was governor, we had 8 hurricanes and 4 tropical storms in 16 months. Our state was on its back. We recovered far faster than what people thought because we led. We ran to the challenge rather than cutting and running. That's what we need in Washington, D.C. We need someone with a servant's heart that has a backbone that isn't going to focus on polls and focus groups, is going to focus on the American people to keep them safe and secure. I ask for your vote next Saturday.
Okay, this is a time when you'll compare it to your personal choices. Make some notes for yourself. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next one.
Well, I want to thank the people of South Carolina. You've been fantastic. And look, what I want you to know is I'm going to send a lot of power, money, and influence back to where we all live. But as I've traveled around South Carolina, I've noticed something. You know, it's that people have a sense that you're not going to wait on a president. You know, when I was a kid, we didn't wait on presidents to come to that little blue-collar town and fix things. You know, the Lord made all of us special. The Lord wants us to be connected. I believe we're part of a very big mosaic. And I'll send the power back. And whoever gets elected president here, hopefully we'll take care of the issue of jobs and wages and Social Security and the border. But the spirit of America rests in all of us. It's in our guts. It's taking care of our children. It's taking care of the lady next door who just lost her husband. It's fixing the schools where we live and telling kids to stay off of drugs. You see, I think what the Lord wants is for us to engage. And in America, the spirit of America doesn't come from the top down. The spirit of America rests in us. And I want to call on everyone in America to double down and realize that you were made special to heal this country and lift it for everyone. Thank you all very much, and I hope I can have your vote in South Carolina.
Give you a minute to do the same thing for John Kasich. Okay, and then we'll go to Elizabeth Warren.
So I was born and raised in Oklahoma, but I'm sure glad to be in Texas tonight. All three of my brothers served in military bases here in Texas. That was their ticket to the middle class. Me, I got my big opportunity about a half mile down the road from here at the University of Houston, back when it cost $50 a semester. For a price that I could pay for on a part-time waitressing job, I got to finish my 4-year degree and I became a special needs teacher. And after law school, my first big job was back here in Houston. By then, I had 2 little kids. And when childcare nearly brought me down, my Aunt Bee moved in and saved us all. The paths to America's middle class have gotten a lot smaller and a lot narrower. Today, service members are preyed upon by predatory lenders. Students are crushed by debt and families cannot afford childcare. I know what's broken, I know how to fix it, and I'm going to lead the fight to get it done.
Okay, we'll go on to Andrew Yang.
In America today, everything revolves around the almighty dollar. Our schools, our hospitals, our media, even our government. It's why we don't trust our institutions anymore. We have to get our country working for us again instead of the other way around. We have to see ourselves as the owners and shareholders of this democracy rather than inputs into a giant machine. When you donate money to a presidential campaign, what happens? The politician spends the money on TV ads and consultants, and you hope it works out. It's time to trust ourselves more than our politicians. That's why I'm going to do something unprecedented tonight. My campaign will now give a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for an entire year to 10 American families, someone watching this at home right now. If you believe that you can solve your own problems better than any politician, go to yang2020.com and tell us how $1,000 a month will help you do just that. This is how we will get our country working for us again, the American people.
Ah.
When I'm doing this in person, instead of using a timer, which is kind of what I was doing here, I walk around the room and I keep an eye on who's still writing. And once you get to the point where about 3/4 of the kids have stopped writing, then I start the conversation again. I don't know what your individual reactions were to any of those, and that's none of my business. So I'm not going to ask you about that specifically, but if you're willing to share some of your reactions and your broad observations or generalizations with the rest of us, I would appreciate it. Anybody want to go first?
I'll go first. This is Mariam, and I was quite surprised. After the first one, I really didn't have any opinions on everybody else. It just sounded so political, you know. But I was surprised to find that if I had to choose between those four people, I would have voted for Jeb Bush. But in real life, I would never vote for Jeb Bush. But mainly because he talked about his experience, he talked about his success, and then he talked about what he would do. Those are things that, and he had some evidence showing that he had done that in the past when he talked about his success in Florida, which, unlike the other candidates, it was more what I considered pie in the sky, hopeful, this is what I'm going to do, but they didn't talk about who they were and where their successes were in the past. So I found that kind of interesting just for myself, you know, in terms of what we talked about and what was important to us.
Thanks, Mariam.
I can go next. If you want me to.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I thought, again, Bush, I found his remarks, he was very steady. He talked about common purposes. He talked about being united, and he used the word leadership, and he also used the word servant's heart, which I liked, which is a little bit humble. And my only negative was he just talked about weather disasters, and I didn't know if that was really something that was that important to me that he took care of. And then Kasich turned me off immediately because his first line was power, money, and influence. Really turned me off. And then he continued to turn me off because he went on and on and on about how the Lord is everything, the savior. It's not about government, it's the Lord. Then Warren, I actually wouldn't probably vote for her, but she talked about her family, military experience in the military, which I liked, her value to education and her background in service. And she really understood the issues of the middle class. What I didn't like is she said she was going to fix it, and she didn't really tell me how she was going to fix it. So, and Yang, lip service, schemy, did not like, nothing. Just turn me off.
Thanks, Taylor.
I'll speak up if
sure.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that as the presenter, I think in summary of what has just been articulated, I would ask the students, well, based on this, what do you think about making your judgment just on a speech that you heard?
Yeah.
And I would ask them that question because certainly we all have a greater depth of understanding of those four candidates. And if we based it simply on that criteria and that one speech, we would potentially be voting for someone other than we ultimately would if we knew more about them. So,
but I think that that's what's interesting about the previous conversations when we identified what we were looking for, because I have to admit, when I was listening to them, I was thinking about my answers to those questions. What qualities would I look for in the person I would vote for? So I would hope that by the time they get to this, they would also be thinking about that when they hear these speeches.
Well, I think that it's interesting how easily one can be swayed by that which is from a camera. And I agree that Jeb Bush expressed the most broad vision and experience, and yet I don't know what his values are, so I couldn't vote for him based on that alone. And also it's so contextual because each of the candidates, like Warren and Yang, both appealed to their local audience, particularly Elizabeth Warren, and certainly relationship builder you know, like when I pick a candidate, I always also pick who's electable. And someone who's a relationship builder with their audience, that's an important part of campaigning. So I think it's a real interesting exercise.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm going to present all this stuff to my grandchildren. They're going to be my guinea pigs. But just to help them really understand, you can't really base such an important decision on one speech. You have to really do your homework. You have to, you know, investigate and see what their you know, their stand is on certain issues and do some reading. You just can't, you know, decide after you watch the debates and say, oh, that's my guy. You know, it's, you got to do your homework, you know.
I felt, oh, can I jump in?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. No, I felt that having seen that list of personal, you know, the list multiple times really shifted my brain into, you know, finding those qualities in the various candidates. And it was very powerful sort of template to apply to these individual candidates. And I have to agree with Tila, that the use of the word Lord by one of the candidates was, to me, very off-putting. It was almost like it was just a little, you know, here I am doing my job for the religious people of America, and really was poor. Jeb was a lot more organized and forceful than I thought he would be. That was surprising, although I doubt that I would agree with his policies. I thought that the final candidate was creative and visionary and bold. He didn't turn me off in the way that some have described, but anyway. And one of the candidates ticked every box I had, and I would be happy to vote for that person.
Okay. Yes, Steve.
Yeah, in terms of Jeb Bush and Kasich, they were this was the South Carolina Republican primary. So if you're not talking about weather and God, there's not a lot else that you're going to be talking about, I would think. What I focused in on was the body language from each candidate. Jeb Bush I noticed that as he was speaking positively, he was shaking his head no at the same time, and I think that diluted his message for me. Kasich used his body language that you could see more for emphasis right at the end. And Elizabeth Warren used a lot of open hands and head tilt and smiling, which are friend gestures. So I think that worked well for her. And Andrew Yang used the leadership gestures with the big open arms and making, showing things over here, which kind of goes with at least my impression of what he was trying to accomplish. That's all I got.
Steve. Thank you. Jean?
Alrighty. Okay. Bush talked about his past, but I didn't hear him talk about what the current issues might be and any plans to address anything that was bothering his constituents. He did seem like the calmest and the most fatherly candidate, because he wasn't yelling at us like a used car salesman does, and everybody else yells at us like used car salesmen do on TV. And so he seemed calm, but not terribly energized. The other three were all energized. And I was kind of listening for the bigger message, because the bigger message from Kasich seemed to be, we can do it, but you got to do your part. And, you know, we're individuals and we can all do it by helping each other, but the government is not there to rescue you. And it's like, okay, that works for some parts of the country, but it doesn't work for all of the country. So I could see a division there. It wasn't everybody he was addressing. He was addressing whoever he was addressing. And then I actually, what I liked about Liz Warren's speech was that she gave you her background, her family background, and she told you her values without saying, I love children. She showed you by how she got a degree, she has people in the military, she was a teacher, she's a mom, she cares about childcare, and she seems to know what some of the issues of her constituents are. And even though she didn't address the solutions in her speech, I mean, I know she has solutions. But it seemed like she started with herself and then she twisted over to, okay, and you're the people and what's causing problems for some of you right now. And I'm aware of what's causing problems for you. And I'm going to try to work to help fix some of those. And then Andrew just basically said, I'll give the best people $1,000 if they tell me what the problems are and how to fix them. And it's like, no, you're supposed to be a leader. Being a leader doesn't say throw it back at the people and give them a little carrot and tell them to fix it. So to me, that was gimmicky and it was creative, but it wasn't what I would want in a leader. I would want a leader who walks in there knowing what they think are the issues that people are interested in. So I don't know. I tried to get the big picture from what they were each saying. And I listened for the words too, but there's a lot behind the words, so what's their attitude and what's their values and stuff behind their words. And I don't know. I kind of thought Liz gave us the most of that, and there were problems probably with all of their speeches. They didn't give us everything. So,
Miriam, you have your hand raised?
Yes, I have a question. So I'm thinking that since this is towards the end of our lesson, aren't we supposed to hope that the students are using what we have taught to date to answer this question? Or are we just answering this question based on this clip? Because
Good question. Once the students have a chance to talk with one another, and usually I break them up into groups to do this because it would take too much time to do the whole class. Right. But once we do that, several of you mentioned, and it usually comes up from the kids too, is I don't know enough from just this one little clip. So then the next question is, all right, so how do we find out more about each one of these candidates? And then you can lead them into how do you find resources? And of course, as the lead, one of the sources is vote411.org, but it is not the only one. And so kids need to know that they can go to candidates' websites, they can look at people who have been in office, and they can go to Legiscan and they can find out how they have voted on particular things. So what most of the time what people come away with is, oh, I never looked at the candidates like this before. And I realize now that just looking at the debate is not going to be the way I can really make a good decision. I'm going to make an impulsive decision based on what they've chosen to show me, which they've practiced a whole lot before they get on that screen. I can't make my decision based on that. And that's what we want them to walk away with, is that understanding that they don't know enough. They've got to be able to look more deeply at the candidates. And generally, they will walk away with that. All right, so if we have time after that, well, first of all, I asked them, they have this feedback. But then this is really fun if you've got enough time. And if you have an 80-minute class period, like a block schedule, you can usually get to do this and do it effectively. Otherwise, I tell the teacher that it's available and suggest that they do this as a follow-up activity. So let's look at this. All right, you've got your perfect candidate. That candidate has been elected to office, and now the real world starts in. And there are crises that are likely to face people who are in elected office pretty quickly after they get that office. So if you have time, you can do this on a Jamboard. I'm just going to do this on the Jamboard in a demonstration. I'm not going to ask you to get into it right now. But it's fun for the kids to say, what are some of the things that are wrong in our world today? And then find an image and add it to the board that's here. So this one is wildfires across the country. So what's another one that we might add to that? You can just call them out.
School shootings.
Okay. So you can go to the image. Oh, wrong thing. Google Images. And you can say school shootings. Huh.
Oops.
Yeah, that's crazy. All right, these are mine. I don't know why. Nope.
Maybe just
It
Google
should be-
schools.
It should be in Google Images, and these are the things that happen. And I do have somebody check links before we send them out. But
Maybe Google schools. Yeah. Maybe
no,
school shooting. You could. I don't know though.
I'm going to try it this way.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah. All right.
I
But at
see.
any rate, what you should be able to do is to go to that and then put in the word that you want, and then a picture will come up and the kids can drag it onto the board. So they're personal issues. And we know young people 18 to 24 are issue voters. So this is one of the things that can help get them to start thinking about the issues as well when they start looking at the candidates. So, so these are the issues that come up. So we want you in your groups to think about this. Your candidate's been in the Oval Office for 9 months, and that's enough time to get settled, but not so long that there's an established track record. And this new crisis has emerged. They have 5 minutes in a group to choose the crisis they want to deal with, and then to draft the opening lines of a press conference. And the idea behind that is to get your constituency to understand that you've got this. You are the leader that they voted for, that you can help manage those crises. So these are ones that kids have picked up, have come up with in the past. Imagine that the drinking water in several major cities becomes undrinkable because of devastating infrastructure compromise. So that's first choice. The second one is cybersecurity. Imagine a foreign nation has been able to hack into the Department of Homeland Security and obtain sensitive information about every person residing in the US. Wow. The third one, and I'll tell you, this came up before COVID was a thing. Nobody knew COVID was coming. And it initially said a new super virus has hit the world.
Right.
And it just blew my mind when COVID actually hit and they'd come up with this. But this one was modified. The nation's nearly reached herd immunity when a new variant originating in Southern Europe emerges. It's more deadly, more easily transmitted, and the current vaccines aren't protective. And then the fourth one, a major storm on the scale of Hurricane Sandy is on its way and will likely devastate the New Jersey shore. So those are the 4 crises. The kids have to pick one, and you give them like 30 seconds to do that, because otherwise they'll sit there and they'll argue with one another about it. And then they have to choose who the press secretary is going to be when they return. And then in that 4 minutes that's remaining, they have to write the opening lines of the press release. Now, I'll tell you, there used to be a scenario 5, which was a school shooting. And I had to take that out because that's what they all chose. And there's such an example of so many times of that press releases have been made, or, press conferences have been held, that you heard exactly what you've heard on TV over and over again. So that kind of freaked me. All right. So what's your takeaway? This is now something for you to think about yourself. And I will try the Jamboard again and hope that you can get at it, that I'm not going to mess this up. I'm going to share it with editing rights. Stop my share. Okay. And what I'd like you to do is answer the question, based on this lesson, what's something that you used to think that has changed in your thinking by participating in this? So I used to think, but now I think. What did you used to think that has changed?
I'm getting the same Jamboard.
Yeah, hold on. I'll show you. There should be at the top, arrows to
Ah,
the left
okay.
and the right. If you go to 4 out of 4, the little number 4 out of 4, you should be at the right channel.
Ah, okay.
Remember?
I can't get, oh, there it is. Oh my
No,
God.
I just popped that up. I saw your name go in. Are you not able to get your own by clicking on the sticky tab?
Correct. I could not get any response from the entire column.
Um,
Don't worry about me. I just don't worry.
Pat,
yes.
I have yet to be able to figure this out. I see it. I see the columns. When I click on your link, I go to I get to Google, and I don't really know how to get to the page. I don't know. It's consistently not working for me.
Okay. I'll work with you separately on that another time, Tila. We can set up a call just if you're interested in learning how to do it.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to need some more training too.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's okay. All right. And if you're in a classroom, one of the things you can do is to have a sheet of paper and just ask the kids to write that, use a half sheet or something like that and give them lines to fill that in, which is much easier than trying to do it in a remote situation. But it gives them a chance to think back over the whole lesson and to try to decide what was the most impactful to them personally and how their thinking has changed. So at the end of the lesson, what you want to try to do is to have that all, recur in their mind, and that helps to make stuff stick better. And that's just more information about our Energizing Young Voters Ambassador program. So I'm going to stop sharing and come back to all of you. All right, so that's the presidential form. What I'm going to do is to give you, let's say, a 10-minute break. And then what I want to do when you come back is to share with you some pieces of some of the other programs. And those pieces will be things that we modified to make it more appropriate for the different elections that are there. Okay, so 10 minutes will be about 2:50, correct? It's about 2:38 right now, so 2:50 my time, 10 minutes. I'll see you then.
Okay. Alexa, set the timer for 10 minutes.
So what are some of the things that we have changed depending on the election cycle? And we did have the developer's permission to do that. And she was actually surprised, when I spoke with her after she wrote the presidential one, she said to me, "Oh, now it's outdated." And I said, "Oh, no, it's not." Really just slight modifications will make it appropriate for any of the elections that we have here. So these are some of the things that we've done. And I'm going to point out 3 in particular. The midterm elections. What we needed to modify was the place where you can actually find the job descriptions for those people. It's still in the Constitution, obviously, but it is not in the same article. But these are the words that came from it. So you can just pick this up and use it the way it is, because this applies regardless of what state you're from. The same thing is going to apply for a U.S. Senator or Assembly person. When it came to the qualifications, they're different. So the senators have different requirements than the Assembly people did. So we just combined them together and just said, these are the Assembly and these are the Senate. and then their responsibilities differ too. But if you look through it, pretty much everything else is exactly the same. When it came to the video clips that we used, we felt that there wasn't that much difference because we were looking at whether the leadership qualities that we felt were important were present in those video clips. What we were doing was giving practice identifying that, not necessarily having to have a candidate that was running for that office. But I think it would be really interesting if we could get video clips of the people who are doing that and who are from our own state. The only thing you have to be careful of when you do that is whether or not it is free to use. So that comes into play later on when we're talking about more local things. But other than that, the only other thing that you might need to do is to change some of the crises that come up. So that one is pretty much, almost exactly the same, except for that early part, the where you find the requirements for the people who are running. When it comes to the state elections, we have two. We have a separate gubernatorial and New Jersey Senate and Assembly one. So we broke it up into the two different ones. The New Jersey Senate and Assembly is one that we did just last week. And there is a young woman, a high school senior, who is now she's a rising freshman at Duke University from New Jersey, who's created a series of videos. Let me go back. She's got 3 of them done. 2 of them are posted here already, but she came and presented with us and used one of these 2 videos when we started talking about the New Jersey elections. I'm just going to play a couple of minutes of this, maybe 2 minutes, so that you can see the quality of the work that our kids can do. And you've got kids in your schools like this too. And so if there are kids like that, those are the ones that you want to try to involve in the work that we're doing, because they are leaders in their school for the most part. They can be very effective at spreading the message.
So our state government often feels very detached from us. Let's work together to make the state government more accessible and more personable. So today we're going to be focusing on who represents you in government, focusing first on the executive branch, the governor and his related staff members, and then talking about the legislative branch and all of your representatives. So today we're going to be focusing on my home state of New Jersey. If you don't like that, we'll stop watching. But in all seriousness, a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is applicable to all 50 states. So first, let's talk about the executive branch. When you vote for a governor, you may think you're voting for just a single person, but with your vote comes much more. You're also taking into consideration their lieutenant governor, their chief of staffs, and everyone else they're going to appoint for state office. All state legislative elections happen on odd numbered years. Governors serve in New Jersey for 4-year terms, and they can't serve more than 2 4-year terms in a row. Currently, the governor of New Jersey is Phil Murphy, and the next gubernatorial election, or of the governor, is in 2025. So as I mentioned, there's also the pick for lieutenant governor. States elect lieutenant governors in many different ways. Some are elected and run separately from the governor. Others run on a team ticket, like a U.S. vice president and president. In some states, they don't even have a lieutenant governor. In New Jersey, the best state, there is a team ticket, and the lieutenant governor candidate is selected by the governor themselves. New Jersey's current lieutenant governor is Sheila Oliver. So, what are the roles of a governor? What are you electing them to even do? So all governors develop and submit a biannual or annual budget. In New Jersey, it's annual. The governor must also sign into law every single bill that's passed in the legislature. And they can also veto bills, which basically means they say cannot pass. And in New Jersey, there's a special veto the governor can do called the pocket veto. happens when the governor fails to take action on a bill. So it's inaction rather than action that allows this bill to not be signed into law. So the governor also supervises a number of state agencies and departments that see out day-to-day functions of the executive branch. And the governor can also appoint secretaries to the heads of these different departments. And this is where the judicial branch comes in New Jersey. The governor also appoints state Supreme Court judges and Superior Court judges. So while we don't elect our judges directly, we indirectly elect them through our governor. So you see, who you choose to vote for as governor is a big deal.
Okay, so you can see what she's done is to make something that can actually be used by other states, but you'd need to introduce it so that the kids make the switch, and you'd need to give in any information that might be different, like the fact that we elect the governor and the lieutenant governor together. That might not be the case in Washington or in Colorado or in Arizona. So you need to check those facts and make sure that you've got them for the thing. But that's a great introduction. The second half talks about the Senate and the Assembly, but that's a great introduction to the vote by design when you're doing the governor. Kids influence kids.
Question, if I may?
Sure, anytime.
I'm not from New Jersey, and one thing I find a little confusing is your reference to assembly people. And I understand that you probably have a general assembly in New Jersey.
Yes.
We call ours the state legislature. So we would have legislators rather than, I mean, that would be the term that I would use.
That's right. And then you would just, you would
go ahead, please.
You would take this slideshow and copy it, and then name it for yourself for Washington, and then change whatever needs to be changed to make it accurate for your state.
Sure.
But you can use almost everything that is in this with minor modifications.
Yes, and I'm in the process of doing that. I just also, for the national one, it seemed to me that you also use the word assembly people when Congress people would be correct. Yeah. So, okay, I just wondered if there was something I wasn't getting. So
you're right.
Thank you for answering that.
Okay.
I have a question. I was just so impressed by that clip, and I'm thinking of some of the adult volunteer organizations I'm involved with just to educate, because I'm surprised that the adult population who is not aware of this. Are we allowed to use this for any age group, or is this only?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. She is just one amazing young woman. She did all 4 of these over this summer. She wrote and won a grant to get the money to get the editing equipment that she needed in order to do these. And that's how she spent part of her summer. It's just incredible. And I think, it's so youth friendly. She asked about her speed of presentation, and then she tried it out in the classroom, and the kids were fine with it. I need more time to process because my brain's older, but the kids were okay with it. They were really attentive through the whole thing, and they were able to use that information when they were moving ahead and talking about, where you did the Jamboard and you have to list the job description of the governor, and then the assembly people, or the senator and the assembly people. So I thought I'm just so amazed with her. She's just, and she is not the only one who's like that. We have another young woman who is a member of the Young Voters Advisory Board that makes decisions about what the organization should look at next in terms of what we do. Last year, she made a presentation at the Women's Conference for the UN. She was 16 years old and she did that. That's astounding. And there are other young people like that out there. The fact that we offer this when young people like these 2 young women and others get involved in what we're doing. You know, once it's presented to them, they say, oh, that's really cool, you know, and then they get involved. It's almost like you've given them a gift and they just blossom. When I made a presentation 2 weeks ago in Red Bank Regional High School near here, there was a 14-year-old, a freshman, incoming freshman, who just jumped. You could see her get so excited. And she said after day one, can I present with you? And so I met with her on Zoom that night and went over sections of the next day's presentation. And by golly, for the next 3 days, she was a co-presenter with me in that school, a 14-year-old. So if she can do it, so can other kids. So I think it's really helpful for them to see videos like that so they can see that they're not the only one and they're more willing to put themselves out there and to say, I want to be involved in this. Again, we use the same video clips there, but you could, if you wanted to, find clips of actual candidates. And then we used in here, in this one, we used the same, I think the same scenarios, but you can easily change those. When you have the kids search for them, have them search for local situations. I can show you one of the things. What am I looking for here? I'm going to go to the Board of Education next. For those of you outside the state of New Jersey, right now there is a lot going on statewide in terms of Board of Education elections. By law, boards of education elections are not allowed to be partisan in the state of New Jersey, but they're becoming very partisan. And the issues that are arising come from a conflict between views held by the left and the right. We recently had the State Board of Education approve new state standards for the health and physical education curriculum. And one of the things within that was that the school environment had to be welcoming and friendly to people regardless of gender. And that has just created a furor across the state, with people with real concerns on both sides of the issue going to boards of education and just creating bedlam and then working to getting candidates who are kind of exacerbating that based on their trying to get themselves elected into office on their campaigning. The other issue is book banning, and that I think is not just in New Jersey. That's something else. Other states are dealing with that too. So we had to be somewhat careful about what we did here, but we still wanted to encourage kids to be able to talk to one another about some of those things. So what did we do here? We made some changes. We actually went to the requirements that there were for the school board members, which the New Jersey School Boards has its own website. We had kids talk earlier about what kinds of decisions, and in New Jersey, and I'm assuming other places, board members only approve policy, vote on budgets, and appoint administrators. They do not have any right to day-to-day operations in the school district. So in this slide, we talk about that. When it came to looking at candidates in action, these are not New Jersey candidates, but these are people from a Tennessee district who were running for a Board of Education office. And the two candidates here showed very different characteristics. So it gave the kids a chance to hear people who were talking about school board issues or school issues and to try to see those qualities that they were most anxious to see in a candidate within those candidates. Now, people have said to me, so where do you get these clips if you want to use something that's not those presidential candidates? You can do a search online, Board of Education candidates, municipal office of candidates, but somebody said to me, can you use the League of Women Voters forums or candidate forums? And the answer is unqualified no, because those candidates are assured when they agree to be in that their statements, they won't be clipped. They won't be, taken out of context. And so as league members, we have agreed not to use any of those materials in anything like this. So just if you're going to make a change, don't use League of Women Voters forums. Here are some of the things that the kids came up with for a Board of Education election, which I thought were good ones. See, it worked when we did that. And then they also wrote what the crises were. This one I thought was interesting, the physical fights increasing and then being like hate crimes. So basically those are the differences that exist currently in what's here. So any questions about that? And you're free to use anything that's in those. So
I just want to say Sheila Oliver passed away, I think, last week. So you might want to, I don't know how she's going to amend her or edit her video, but maybe we might have to say something.
Yeah, she knows that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
This was great. Thank you.
One other thing I thought of, if you use other people's video clips, it's the fairest thing to do to use their opening statements, because those are the things they've prepared ahead of time instead of picking and choosing from among the questions that might be asked during the forum.
Where are the recorded sessions that you have done this week?
I am hoping that they're stored on my computer.
Oh, okay, you have them.
And
Okay.
I have them and I will send them out.
No worries.
But I'll give you a forewarning. Like this, I think I hit the record button again when we came back into session. But I went this morning to change the file names on them, and I can't find where they were. So I'm hoping this afternoon I'll do it right away and I'll be able to find all 3 of them so far. And I will get the recordings to you as well as to the people that signed up who didn't attend, and anything else that may have come up that you might be interested in actually seeing at the time that I send it out.
Here's another question in reference to how we have the requirements in the state of New Jersey. How you have such a rich array of sessions here. Can a district just pick and choose those sessions that they prefer?
Absolutely.
And so, okay, so so in essence, we just want to make sure that they're comfortable with the concepts covered in each one, and they can go over this, and then they can make their decisions. Okay. And it would,
sometimes I also recommend something. I was in conversation this morning with a district in Sussex County in New Jersey, which is like the upper left, further northwest county. It's a very rural area. It's a very conservative area. It's where I lived for 33 years. And the high school that my kids went to reached out and said they were interested in making sure they were meeting the requirements of 18A, which is the law that requires schools to give kids who will be eligible to vote the chance to register through the school as well as to have education through the schools. Well, they do an amazing job of getting the kids to register. They get a list of all of the kids who will be eligible. They give it to their honor society, their, whatever you call it, the student council, the officers of the student council. And each one of those meets with some of the students in that school to make sure that they're registered. So I said, wonderful, shout out to you and to your staff. That's the best way to do it. It sounds to me as if you're ready to think about doing a voting simulation so that the kids who now are registered actually have their concerns reduced about voting for the first time because they will have experienced that. So it sounded to me like Newton was ready to do that. So I'll recommend something, even though probably the others would be just as valuable. I will also meet with the AP Gov teacher there and say, this is the other stuff we have. Is there anything of interest? How can we help you? Either teach it yourself, or would you like us to work with, have some league person come in? So you know how to sell. You've done this your whole life, is sell.
Yeah. So in essence, we're providing them a menu.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Okay, I like that. Okay, cool.
But the one thing, Pat, that I recall, and I experienced it when I went to the convention, was encouraging them to start with the suffragette timeline, because it generates a real feeling when people have to sit down and stand up. And I think it's a very good intro to the others. But I was having similar thoughts, Francis, about whether I felt, for example, if they said, well, we're only going to do 2 sessions, which 2 do I think are the most important? And I think that the one that we did perhaps yesterday, when you ultimately give people that QR code of how to find reliable news sources, is vital. In fact, I was thinking, Pat, of even repeating that slide somehow in this past one, after the candidates' little speeches, was, as kind of a conclusion of how difficult it is, just based on a soundbite, to make a decision. What do you do next? And so that would just be a very easy slide, and for people, they'd love to copy a QR code. So I thank you, Fran. That gave me a reason to speak out about that.
Thank you. For those of you who weren't here yesterday, that was the one called What's Your Issue? And I Am the Change. And the slide, what Puri is talking about is a product that comes from Ad Fontes Media that is free. It's not a product, and it's very carefully structured and very nonpartisan. But it helps people look at their news sources, podcasts, TV sources, all of the things that they might look at for information about anything, and not just politics, and see where people who lean left, right, and center have decided that source fits. Is it reliable, and how reliable? Is it biased, and how biased? And
can we get that by looking at that lesson from yesterday?
Yes. Yeah. Or you can go to Ad Fontes Media, AdFontesMedia.com.
Okay.
So, but the
Steve
QR code is in the slideshow, so you can just go directly. And now they have an app, so you can just download it to your phone, and you've got it right there, and you can use it, yourself, or you can use it in a classroom. When you're teaching and somebody brings up something, all right, where does that fit?
Yeah.
I do that with my husband regularly because we have very different political points of view.
Wow.
So, anything else?
Oh, I do want to say, Pat, I love you. I think this program is outstanding. But as a woman of color, I think that I want to suggest that you be mindful of your audience. And so I don't find the same value in the first module with the suffragette, where people have to stand and sit. Because I've been marginal, I've been the part of the people that have to sit most of the time. So it's not going to have the same effect on people of color, I don't believe. So you might want to remember that.
Do you have another idea?
Yeah, can you make it better?
Give it different idea.
I'd have to think about that, how to make that exercise better, where it's more of a teaching moment without having to feel left out, because you're let me think about that. Let me kind of.
I would love your input on that, Janice. Yeah.
I think one of the reasons it was so powerful is because I am white and blonde and I got excluded. And so it really hit me, right? So so it's definitely effective with that population, but I really appreciate your input. Thank you.
And I thought just the opposite. I thought that it pointed out the significance of why we should vote, because we've been denied the opportunity for so long, and why it was so important. So I thought that was great.
That's why I think a different way to teach it. I just don't think the sitting and standing and, you can't vote now. And it just didn't ring well with me. But that's very interesting, Marianne.
Yeah. You know what? I don't know if we can arrange this, but I think it would be really helpful if you have groups of women that would feel the way you do, women of color, who could get together with me and we'll sit down and actually see how that might be massaged to make it better. It does, I can see what you're saying, and I can see what Miriam is saying, and I can see what Piri is saying. And that's why in the beginning of each one of these, I make it really clear, I hope, that every lesson needs to be adapted for your context. So you make it touch the people that you're working with. As long as you stick basically within that script, you're doing a good job. But I am very honored that you felt comfortable saying that, Janice. So please, let's sit down together and do it.
Okay.
Thank you. Other? All right, you get home to go home early today. Thanks everybody for being here, for participating as well as you did. I really appreciate it. It was fun for me.
Thank you very much.
Your patience.
This is great.
Thank you, Pat.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Stop
Take
recording.
care. Bye.